from the heart of Dubai, where tomorrow is being built today, to the world. Welcome to the CTO Show with Mehmet. Here, we redefine technology and reimagine possibilities. With Mehmet, delve into the riveting realms of AI, cybersecurity, and digital technology. Experience the thrilling highs and lows of startups. Immerse yourself in the spirit of entrepreneurship and witness the future of business innovation being written in real time. Now, without further ado, let's tune in and explore the future.
Hello and welcome back to a new episode of the CTO Show with Mehmet. Today, I'm very pleased. Joining me from the US, from New York, Rob Duffy, CTO of Health Edge. Rob, thank you very much for being here with me today. I appreciate the time. I know how busy it can get. But before we start, what I like to do is I like to keep it to my guests to introduce themselves. So tell us a little more about, your journey, your experience, and what you're currently up to, and then we can start the discussion from there.
Amazing. Thank you for having me. Really appreciate having me on the show, and nice to be here and get a chance to talk to your audience. So my name is Rob Duffy. I work for a company called Health Edge, and Health Edge is a software as a service insurance core administrative processing system provider. So if you're in the US, obviously we have a paid healthcare industry here. Many people consume healthcare, and then the bill is paid partly by the insurance company and partly by them. And the whole process of collecting the claim, adjudicating it, making sure that it's coded and billed correctly, figuring out how much the plan says the consumer pays and how much the plan says the health insurance payer pays. That whole process is very, very complex and involves hundreds of thousands of rules. And we provide a software as a service platform that enables health insurance companies to do that automatically. And normally we're replacing very old antiquated systems like Mainframes, and we're putting this piece of technology into our customers. And if you can imagine doing that, our customers' systems and processes and people and technology, the entire ecosystem is sort of built around the old system. So when we come in with a new system, it really is a big transformation for our customers, not only from a technology perspective, but also from a people perspective and a process perspective. And doing so, we really kind of digitally transform a lot of the health insurance companies that are on our platform. And that leads to a much better consumer experience in health insurance, which has a very bad rep in the US in general from its poor consumer experience. So I'm excited that we're providing better experiences to the consumers of health insurance in the United States.
Great. We have a lot to talk about, Rob, because you mentioned mainframes, something which I didn't prepare, but I have to ask a few things. But before this, what drove you to have this career and becoming a CTO for a leading SaaS company? I'm always curious to know the stories behind what get you there.
So my background, I started my career as a software developer, and I've always joined companies that are kind of in an industry inflection point. So I early on in my career, I joined Amazon at the point where e-commerce was really replacing physical retail. From there, I moved to the Kindle organization at the point where ebooks were replacing or overtaking physical books. I left. I joined a media company, Time Inc. At a point in the sort of media landscape where digital media was overtaking print media from a revenue perspective. I left and went to Expedia Group when travel had shut down because of COVID. No one was traveling, and then sort of brought travel back to the world through Expedia. And at all these points in my career, I really joined companies that are in this industry inflection point. And healthcare is really one of the last, if not the last industry to go through a digital transformation. And it's an exciting place to be. And, I joined Health Edge because we're really leading that digital transformation in healthcare. We're one of the, most successful, largest core administrative processing systems. And with the most cloud native of all of our competitors. And we're bringing that expertise and that transformation to an industry that has lagged behind in terms of its transformation for many, many years.
Absolutely. Rob, you mentioned something, I told you about the mainframes and, healthcare. Now, I know the answer because I ask a lot of CTOs and a lot of CIOs in healthcare space, and I know, what held them back. But from your point of view, why some verticals, especially healthcare, looked like little bit behind the journey? So was it just, because the systems were designed in a way it's hard for us to take them to the next level? Is it because of all the privacy, security, and other, regulations that we have around these sensitive verticals? What caused this little bit slow adoption of new digital technologies for mainly healthcare, let's say?
I think if you think about it, like finance is another good analog, right? Like you have finance and healthcare are probably the last on the sort of transformation curve, which is kind of interesting. You mentioned AI. We can talk about this a little bit later, because if you look at the history of cellular telephony, third world countries skipped hardwired landline telephony and went straight to cellular telephony. So like they are actually further ahead in some things like digital payments. And I think there's a similar thing happening now, like in some of these older companies that haven't gone through a digital transformation. They're experiencing that sort of third world country cellular moment where they're skipping all of the steps that they need to do to transform and kind of looking ahead to an AI future. But we'll save that for later. I think the question was, why do I think that healthcare in particular is taking such a long time to go through this kind of digital transformation? And if you think about the ecosystem that you have inside of a a healthcare company, like specifically a health insurance company that are our customers, the systems and the processes have been built up over a long time. They started on mainframe systems, and each of those mainframe systems provided a bunch of core processing, and then other systems were kind of bolted on, and then they have to get information from all of these intermediaries and third parties, and there's billing and there's enrollment, and then there's like different companies that provide different areas of capability within the company. And what that means is it's just things are everywhere, and the data is everywhere, and in some cases data is in multiple different places, and it's not always hard to tell which is the source of truth or which is correct, and sometimes they might differ. You just have this huge ball of rubber bands that is the central nervous system of a lot of companies, and that's very, very hard to replace, and it's very costly, right? Because you have teams that are put in place to support those things. You have processes that are put in place around the core capabilities of this entire ecosystem, and sometimes you have processes that are put in place to work around the fact that core system doesn't have capabilities, and in some cases you have technology that you built to work around something that doesn't exist in a platform, or does exist in a platform and is done in a strange way. So the whole organization is built around this system, and if you start replacing parts of it and you start transforming parts of it, it is a huge initiative. You have to rethink the technology, you have to rethink the people, you have to rethink the processes, you have to restructure your teams, you have to really change the organization. And I think no one who gets to the level of like CIO or CTO looks at that project and is like, that's going to be easy and low risk, and I have a high degree of confidence that I'm going to succeed, right? So you have to find leaders that are willing to take a risk, that believe in the future and understanding and sell it to their constituents. And when you do that, then you can sort of transform. But a lot of times it's just the cost of the risk in some of these projects can be large, and they haven't, in many cases. Some of the alternatives outside of our, cloud native software platform have been very, very large and cumbersome and hard to put in place. And it's taken a lot of time and energy and effort to put them in, install them. And the buying cycle then becomes 10, 15 years. You buy something that's in there for 10, 15 years. So with our platform, we try and make it a lot easier to do that transformation. And we acknowledge that installing this isn't just like, you click, go, put in a license key and all of a sudden everyone's on a new core administrative processing system, right? Like it really is a transformation, and we help our customers go through that transformation.
Cool. Now, I am not sure if you will agree with me, Rob. The term transformation itself, so it means like we're taking something from state A to state B. although like it's something which should be continuously enhanced. Now, I remember I'm not sure about like which year exactly the term started to appear, but at least I can say 12, 13 years since we are hearing about digital transformation. Now, we were mentioning about digital transformation. There are like some legacy systems still in place in majority of, especially maybe in insurance, healthcare, and so on. But now we have this wave of, and you just mentioned, and it's good time to speak about it, the AI, right?
Yeah.
So now we have the AI transformation coming. Um, Now I know when I was preparing, so from the information the team gave me, and some of the research I did, um, so we see people talking in antithesis about AI, right? But publicly, but behind the doors, some completely different conversations take place. What do you think is this gap coming from? Is it because we didn't complete the digital transformation? Is it because we didn't start in a proper way? Is it still because we have these legacy systems in place? What's your point? Why you mentioned this? Why you are saying there are a lot of talks behind the doors about AI?
I think that AI is a very new technology in the business setting, right? Like, or that's not bad. Large language models are sort of conflate AI and large language models. Large
Right.
language models and the things that we can do with large language models are a fairly new technology within the enterprise. And with any new technology, there comes a sort of fear, uncertainty, doubt. There comes a lot of enthusiasm. There's a lot of not knowing about it, like understanding it at a very high level, but not knowing the details of it. And then there's also just sort of, fear and trepidation that it might be another wild goose chase, right? And in tech, we've had a few wild goose chases, like, the metaverse and like blockchain's going to be everywhere. I think there's a lot of trepidation around just going all in on AI and then it turning out to be something that, you know, ends up slowing you down eventually, or it was just a waste of time or didn't deliver the results. And there's also, a lot of demos and a lot of, really good sort of quick hit one shot use case videos and talks and things at conferences where people look at them and they're like, that's great. And then there's not a lot of real hard evidence and people talking about we eliminated 40% of this work. I think one of the best use cases out there that does demonstrate the power is AWS talks about leveraging Amazon Q for doing Java upgrades, and they eliminated I can't even remember what it was, but it was an astronomical amount of hours, something like 400,000, 300,000, 300,000 hours of work using Q developer to do this Java upgrade. Right. And it's like you think about that and you're like, okay, compare that, a Java upgrade, which is probably the most boring and mundane thing you can possibly do, to some of the demos you see, which are like, look, this is going to completely revolutionize the software development lifecycle. And I have 50 agents, writing all this code and doing this code reviews and all this sort of stuff. So there's this sort of like gap between the actual real hard results, real hard ROI outcomes and the demos. And I think a little bit like, I think about this a little bit like robotics, right? Like when humanoid robots were, shown in science fiction, they were kind of like running around the house and doing things and, feeding your kids in the morning and giving them breakfast. And then I think about the largest deployment of robotics in the consumer world, certainly, is like a small thing that runs around your kitchen and cleans up crumbs, right? Like it's not feeding your kids in the morning or putting their shoes on or getting them ready for school. It's something that at night when you sleep runs around your house and cleans up some crumbs. And I think that difference between the promise of robotics and the reality of robotics is the same when we think about LLMs and the deployment of what they can do within the enterprise. And it really is like there's the demos which are up here, with thousands of agents running around tidying up your company, and like marketing teams are completely be replaced by LLM agents. And then the reality of it is, actually the LLMs are doing Java upgrades and writing unit tests and documentation and doing things that like really are those lower level tasks. And I think too many people focus up here on the art of the possible. And I think as a technology leadership organization, we need to sort of think hard about how can we take work from humans and migrate it to AI and agentic systems, but that work is probably in all likelihood going to be more boring, more mundane things that humans don't really want to do.
So I get that, Rob, and I agree with you. Uh, I used to be just, working on the technical side of the thing since I started the podcast. So I have to also see what other people talk about, how they speak, how they present things. And I agree with you. Sometimes, we see these cool videos and demonstrations of things, as you said, like agents working in the background on something. Now, at the same time, this is happening, and maybe you can confirm, or maybe you have another point of view on this. So, in a company, on a board level, maybe someone on the board watches some of these videos or demonstration, or maybe one of his friends or her friends. They see these things and they come to the board and say, "Hey guys, this is this new AI thing that we have to bring, and yeah, it's doing superb job like helping us." And then we take this and try to implement it in the company from the way up. Instead, which I think should happen, is to look at the bottom, see what needs to happen, and then try to build use cases where AI can fit. Are we seeing the more of the first one there, Rob, in your opinion, where just we are just trying to adopt a hype, or I'm not call it a hype. There's something called AI which exists for a long time, but I mean the LLMs and the tools we're seeing, the co-pilots and the others. Do you think like now executives are trying to bring this as fast as possible, because also they are afraid that they would go out of business, because we're seeing also these analysts talking about like how businesses are being disrupted currently because of AI, and how jobs gonna be different because of AI. So what's your point of view on this?
I mean, I think if you're taking technical directions from the board, there's probably a little bit of a broken relationship there. But I just don't say like sometimes you do get suggestions on technology. I think that you know I think all leaders, all CIOs, all CTOs, all VPs, SPs of engineering should be thinking about how they can deploy LLMs and artificial intelligence and agentic workflows and leverage it through their engineering teams and through their software development lifecycle. I think there's a huge amount of task time reduction that we can provide to our businesses as technology leaders by deploying LLMs. And if you think about the software development lifecycle, everything from writing better PRDs to writing better user stories with better acceptance criteria to creating scaffolding code, to writing unit tests, writing integrations, all these tasks that take up a tremendous amount of time for our engineering teams can be accelerated using LLMs. And I think if you can demonstrate that, and if you can instill a culture of thinking about how can I migrate some of this work from the humans that we currently employ today to AI and agentic systems, then you are leading that conversation. And you're not like, no one is going to come to you from a board perspective or your CEO and say, hey, we should try this technology, because you can say, well, actually, we've got a fairly robust strategy here, and we're already trying these tools, and here's the areas that we're getting leverage. And I don't think that there's going to be a single tool here in this space that is going to be like, oh, I deployed this tool and I got a huge amount of savings across the company. I think the biggest change is going to come from a cultural transformation, where you get everyone thinking about how they can leverage AI and leverage agentic systems, and you train people, and you take your teams through boot camps, and you get everyone thinking about AI first. And like, I think if you can do that, that's where the real benefit and the real value is going to come from. And that's probably going to require more than one tool. It's probably going to require 20 or 30 different tools. If you think about, like the revolution of computing, yes, you had a computer, but, you had maybe 40 or 50 different applications that you interact with every day to do your job effectively. And, I think the same is true for LLMs. Like, yes, we're going to use LLMs and AI, but we're probably going to use 20 to 30 different tools and different agents and different things to get our job done. So I don't think there's one thing that's going to, come from on high and, deliver tremendous amounts of transformation. I think the transformation is going to come from a cultural change.
Great. And on the cultural change, Rob, on this point specifically, um, it's kind of imperative for every leader to try to bring this cultural change there. Now, back to the point how healthcare is different. How easy is to do this cultural change in healthcare?
I think that you know, if there is if in an industry like healthcare and an industry and a company like a health insurance payer or health plan, the cultural change has to be leading to an outcome, right? Like it can't just be like, hey, we need to change culture, we need to get a better AI. It really needs to be like, we're driving an outcome here. And the industry as a whole is very pressured on margins. It's very pressured on reducing the or increasing the efficiency and reducing internal costs. And I think for me, you can have a conversation with a lot of health plans around, we're going to reduce your operating costs. And like at the end of the day, if you're having a conversation with a customer about reducing operating costs, in some cases, it doesn't really matter whether you're doing that with AI or you're doing that with a software as a service, or you're doing that with a rules engine, or the outcome is what matters. And pushing on that reduction of operating costs and saying, hey, we're going to reduce operating costs, but we're going to do it 10 times better than we were able to do it before because we're going to leverage AI. Then you have a lot of momentum behind that transformation, because you can start talking about real hard outcomes and real business outcomes, and people start to get really excited about that. And if you try and push a transformation without a tie to a real business outcome, a real operating cost reduction, or real increase in top line sales, then it's very hard. It's very hard to drive that change. You can't just have that living out there saying we have to transform, and someone says why, and it's like, well, everyone else is transforming. Right? It has to be, transformation has to be a tool. AI has to be a tool, and the outcome that you're driving to has to be operating efficiency for your customers.
Absolutely. I think the trap, and maybe you would agree with me, Rob, and I know you said this before. So the trap is we try to compare ourselves to someone else and saying like we achieve like this amount percentage of getting like faster code or whatever. Now you mentioned in the business outcome about reducing the operational cost. Any other metrics that you think CTOs, even CIOs, they need to focus on? This is really what they should be looking at when doing, uh, not only for the AI, actually, it applies to any change that they're planning to introduce. So, what are, like, in your opinion, the key metrics we should be focusing on as
I
leaders?
honestly, I think the only metric that you need to focus on is the reduction of human hours. Like that's it, right? Humans are incredibly expensive, and AI and agentic systems are 3-4 orders of magnitude cheaper to do tasks that humans are doing. They can't do some tasks. They are terrible and they still need human review. But when you think about that example I gave you of a Java upgrade and how many hours were saved there at Amazon, like it's exactly that. You're just reducing the amount of human hours worked. And honestly, I think that's really the only metric that we need to think about in terms of the outcomes. Now, obviously, there's control metrics that we have to think about. We have to look at things like the quality and the cost of the agentic systems. You have to look at how much supervisory time you need to put on top of that system. You need to look at some of the non-functional requirements around it. And those are also like input metrics. But the real output of any AI project should be a reduction in operating costs and a reduction in human time spent completing tasks.
Right. Now, let's talk about, a little bit and all the things related to data security, which is mainly risk, privacy, and data integrity.
Yeah.
Um, what do you think are the frameworks or approaches that are proven effective, right, to maintaining all the above, to make sure, especially because we talk about healthcare insurance, so people's data are there. Of course, we have the regulations. I know in the US, the HIPAA mainly is the main frame to or framework to follow. But as a CTO or CIO or CISO, maybe even, so how we should be preparing ourselves, especially in the age of AI, because AI means data, right? So when we talk AI, we talk about data that we need to feed the LLMs with. So what have you seen working well?
So we have whenever we're looking to leverage a new piece of technology, or, a new AI system, we have a fairly robust evaluation that we put that technology through, the company through. We have a list of questions. We set up a steering committee, a steering group that kind of evaluates that tool. It's very important for us to really think hard about everything you're talking about. Is this a secure system? Can we, like, what happens to our data? Can we delete our data? Do we have data sovereignty? Do we know where it goes? Like, when we provide data to this company, are they using it then to train their internal models? Like, how can we opt in or out of that? So we have a big questionnaire that covers all of our concerns around leveraging some of these technologies. And every time we get a request to use a new technology, we put it through this evaluation. And then we have a committee that sits and looks at the results of that evaluation and decides, is this something that we want to invest in? Is this a tool that we feel comfortable with? And, is this a company that we trust and we like, and we feel like they're a good partner? And I think being very intentional about who you're partnering with and having that, structure around your evaluation helps to alleviate some of the concerns that you're talking about. And I don't, as a leader in this space, you really have to think hard about, the pace of change and enabling people and developers to have access to the latest and greatest tools, but then doing it in a controlled way. And there's a spectrum of like bureaucracy versus the Wild West. And we try and be somewhere in the middle where we enable our teams to have access to the latest and greatest tools, but we do it in a structured and considered way. And we have some governance and controls around it. And I think we have, I think we're at 50-50 right now. I think we have about 16 tools that we've approved and about 16 or 17 that we've said no to. And we're fairly quick. We can go from a request for a tool to an approval within, 3 to 4 weeks. And we can, make sure that we're not holding back or blocking. And we have some pilot programs that we run, and we have a process that goes through that. So being structured in how you deploy these tools and how you bring them into the organization certainly helps with everything that you're talking about. But you do have to peel back those layers of the onion and look at the company that you're willing to partner with. And the other thing I'll say is, we are huge fans of AWS. We're huge fans of AWS Bedrock, which is their AI developer platform. And that is a very, very safe and secure space for us, where we're able to bring in models. We know where our data goes. There's some controls and systems in place, and that's really providing a great tool for our developers to have access to the latest models and do it in a way that we know is safe and secure, and that our team has some governance and control over it. And I think that, like, leveraging a platform like that, means that you don't have stuff everywhere, and you're not like, you have one development team going with this license, another development team going with this license. You can sort of put it into a single tool, and then you govern that tool rather than having multiple different tools. So picking a platform like Bedrock is certainly an unlock for us, and I think people should, look seriously about adopting that.
Cool. I believe what you described, Rob, also applies not only for following the regulations and being compliant and all this. So applies also for organizations who want to be innovative in regulated environment also as well. So it's not like just related to doing something on the data itself, like maybe any new initiative. So if you're telling me, like, it happens so fast, so that means, you can innovate much, much faster. Now, me as an emerging leader, let's say I'm just get new to the job here, how I first get the support that I needed, and how I take this and push it to my team. What have you seen working well also here?
I think in any pitch, whenever anyone comes to me and says, I want to use X, right? Like, this is a great tool. I always ask for, like, what is the outcome that you're looking to achieve? Like, what are you trying to do with this? And does the cost equal, a lot less than the outcome that you're going to provide. And not many people think about that. They don't really, they sort of like, I would say 50% of people can answer that question effectively when they first start talking about deploying a tool or like bringing something new into the organization. And I think as leaders, it is on us to always be thinking about why we're doing things and the business outcome that we're driving, especially in technology. We should be thinking about what is the business outcome we're driving. And really, the business outcome is either increasing the top line or improving margin by lowering operating costs. Those are the two business outcomes that really matter when you're talking about deploying something new or bringing something new to the organization. So I think if you can frame any request or for support or any new tool or new way of doing things in that way, then you'll get a lot more support from the business. It'll be easier for you to sell and get more momentum behind. And there's ways that you can do that. If you start a pilot, you can say, listen, we don't know. We think, we hypothesize that this is going to save 20% of our developer time doing test automation because we've seen some study here. We'd like to bring it in a small pilot. We're going to do it with 5 developers and then get some hard data on it. And if that works, we're going to steer that out to other people. So I think if you can do that and you can parlay your project into real business value, you'll get more and more and more support. And also you'll realize that some projects that you thought were worthwhile aren't worthwhile. Like you'll actually, like when you start thinking like that, you'll realize that some of the things that you're trying to do actually aren't really, the juice is not worth the squeeze, and that you will abandon some of those projects. So I think, that's number one, get support where tying everything back to a business outcome. And then number two, when you do have that support, when you're driving, change within the organization and you're trying to adopt things, especially something that requires a mindset shift and a human behavior change. And tactic that we found works very well. And we just deployed this, leveraging Claude across 53 people. And we put this pilot program together. We got everyone in a room, in a Teams room. We gave them the tools. We encouraged them to share successes. We had a kickoff. We had prizes. We gave out silly prizes like jars of spicy pickles. We gave out tickets to an AI bootcamp for AWS. So we had some structure around it, and we created this core group of 50 plus people that were sharing stuff with each other and leveraging that collective intelligence to really kind of encourage each other and transform each other. And when, people weren't engaging with it, we would kick them out. We'd have this kind of Squid Game approach where if you weren't leveraging the tools, then bring someone who is. So I think taking something, from that very early pilot, thinking about it from a business outcome perspective, getting support behind it, and then deploying it in a smaller group setting where, you can put energy into that room, energy into that group of people, and get them transformed. Then after that, we can scale it and roll it out across the organization. And, now we're looking at deploying 500 of these licenses across the company. And we're really thinking intentionally about how do you take that small group energy and turn that into big group energy? Because we're actually, worried that if we just give 500 licenses, the adoption of it is going to be 50%, 40%. And some people weren't really engaged with it. So I think you have to be very intentional, and you have to put a lot of energy behind adoption and transformation, and make sure that you are, as a leader, constantly driving people to your source and constantly reminding people. And I sound like a broken record. You should hear me every single meeting, every single project review. I'm like, have you thought about using AI? Like someone says, this project is red. It's taking longer than we thought. My initial response now is always, and I think people are sick and tired of hearing about it now, but I'm like, have you considered using AI tools, to accelerate the remainder of work and maybe bring this project back from red to yellow or green? And it's still, people are like, oh yeah, maybe we should, even though I've said it a million times, it's still not ingrained in people's minds to start thinking about AI and AI tooling first. So when you talk about adoption and you talk about driving change, and you talk about, as an engineering leader specifically, driving a technology implementation like LLMs across your organization and getting people to use it as a first tool, you have to just you have to go all in, and you have to put all of your energy behind constantly reminding people to go to that tool first. And it takes a lot of time and energy. It doesn't happen just by giving people licenses,
Absolutely. So pushing people to think outside of the box, try to leverage, the technology that we have to make sure that we can get things done as fast as possible. So this is comes from a little bit engineering perspective. Now, if and I'm talking about here about developing, writing code, and all this. You mentioned a little bit about AWS Bedrock, which is a fantastic platform indeed. From the infrastructure overall, also as well, you know, uh, Rob, cloud changed a lot of things, made things a lot easy. But have you seen this combination of, scaling in the cloud with AI also giving you and the team superpowers there, and maybe also how we can, combine these two? Because I think what I saw someone shared really a good article the other day. It's actually his thoughts about what happened in the cloud. So when people move to the cloud, a lot of it was like just moving the workload as is without re-architecturing,
Well,
from on-premise to the cloud. And now AI comes and, hey, like, we're paying too much. So do you think we can apply this to rectify some of the mistake that we might have done? And maybe it applies to the healthcare a little bit. I had the chance to work on some healthcare projects in the infrastructure part, and I have seen people were scared to touch anything from architecture, especially whether on the software layer or on the hardware layer, because yeah, we found it this way, it was working fine, and when they shifted to the cloud, they shifted as is. Do you see a role to the AI also to optimize anything here, maybe the architecture, the cost again?
yeah. I mean, I think I like, the power of AI is going to be in driving, 20 to 30% more efficiency in not only the software engineering teams and the cost of humans, but also in our infrastructure costs, and enabling us to do technology refactoring and technology transformation much, much, much faster. And yeah, like, yes, 100%. And, I think about old legacy systems. The hardest thing about old legacy systems is, they are generally, they don't have good test coverage, right? Like you don't have a certainty that when you make a change, it's not going to break anything in the system. And something that we're seeing with LLMs is that they can take a untested system and write unit and integration and sometimes even UI tests for that system, and we can get from 0 to 100% test coverage very, very quickly in a period of time that would have been unreasonable and unimaginable before. And if you can wrap these legacy systems in automated tests, then you have more confidence that any changes you make to them haven't broken anything. And then you can start using LLMs to start transforming some of that legacy technology and breaking it out and refactoring. We have, we've seen great success with some older stored procedure code where, we had like Microsoft SQL stored procedures. We're seeing great success with LLMs taking those stored procedures and turning them into .NET modules. So that is improving the transformation of that older legacy code. And we're doing that because we've been able to wrap these older platforms in automated tests and ensure that the new system performs exactly the same as the old system. And we're actually discovering through that process as well that some systems aren't actually doing the things that we thought that they were doing. As we're writing these tests and writing these documentation, we're then going fixing the systems and, proving the performance. And this is, things that take, a couple of sprints, 2 sprints, 3 sprints that might have taken 6 to 8 months prior.
Wow.
You don't have the confidence that those changes haven't broken anything. You have to tiptoe around the system. So yeah, I think, you think about that, and you think about as a CTO or a CIO or, people in your audience sort of like pitching, like, yeah, I'm going to use AI adoption. Like no board and no CFO and no CFO is going to say no if you can say, I'm going to shave 20% or 30% of the costs of our infrastructure, and I'm going to save 20 or 30% of the cost of software development. You're not going to get that money back, but I'm going to redeploy that capacity somewhere else into new projects, whatever. Or maybe you do, right? You return that savings to the business. Or maybe you can just say, hey, I can guarantee our costs are going to go flat while our top line grows 20, 30% over the next 2 to 3 years. Like that's really how people should be thinking and pitching the power of LLMs to their business stakeholders is in terms of a real world, hard cost savings and efficiency play.
Absolutely. Now, one thing, we talked a lot about AI and LLMs, which, fact is LLM stole the lights from every other technology out there. But in your opinion, Rob, are there any other technologies that would emerge with AI? I'm sure with AI, because I'm not saying anything gonna happen nowadays without AI or in the future, that would have at least the same effect uh, on, again, reducing cost, making things more agile, and getting at the end of the day, especially in healthcare, and actually it applies to every single vertical, getting better customer experience. So what do you think, aside LLMs, can be a running, like first runner, maybe with the AI and LLMs?
I think the most important things is consistent access to functions, right, within platforms, right. What we see is that we can create an agent that does something for a customer, maybe takes a regulatory update and turns into something. If we can get that LLM or that agent to then act on other systems, then we can start stringing these things together. And that's either through access to an API or access to, in some cases with more modern systems, some of these MCP servers. Like that is the key for us, stringing these agents together and creating actual, like, much longer workflows that are going to take more out of the hands of the humans, and create more efficiencies. But that requires that the systems and platforms that we use have consistent APIs, have well-documented APIs. That every function within the system can be done using an API. And that's not always the case, right? Like, we do have systems that in everyone's ecosystem, we have systems that don't have good APIs. You have systems that don't have every function available to you programmatically. You have to go through the UI. So I think that's going to be the biggest unlock, is as we start to see the deployment of AI and agentic systems, is going to force a drive towards systems, legacy systems, exposing their functionalities through API and exposing their data through API. And that's gonna change a lot of dynamics within our industry, because many of those systems don't expose that functionality via an API, or don't expose that data via an API, because if they do, then it's easy to migrate away from that platform and replace it with something else. And they treat it as a sort of, defense mechanism, and improve their stickiness of that platform in their customer base by not exposing those things. And unfortunately, those systems are going to be, capability wise, they're going to be lagging behind all of their competitors, and they will prevent the usage of that system inside an agentic system, and therefore almost make themselves redundant if they keep that strategy. And I think what that's going to end up doing is making all of these different systems easier to replace, all these different peripheral systems much easier to replace over time. And that's going to change the dynamics of the market a little bit. And like that, I think, is going to be a big unlock, because then you're going to see companies that have been hamstrung with older technology, because it has been hard to replace. Those companies will no longer be hamstrung by that technology in 5-10 years, because that technology just won't exist.
Right. So the question would not be anymore, have you adopted AI? The question, how much your AI systems are talking to each others. I think this is the question, which is, I think, from API's perspective, a lot of companies, especially when the rise of SaaS started, that exposing every single action you can do within any platform, regardless. So you can do it. So this has opened the door, and I think without I can't imagine any system today without having the API exposed to extract a kind of data from there. Of course, we need still the security, we need the rear guards, everything needs to be in place. But yeah, to your point, because at the end of the day, if we don't get these systems talk to each other, we might be stuck. And I think the next wave of innovation would be on that side. So absolutely. Rob, as we are almost close to the end, this is kind of a classical question I ask at the end. If you want to advise to be CTO, so someone who might be still a junior developer today, or maybe someone who's just started their career but they are aiming to become a CTO, what kind of advice do you give them?
Yeah, I would, learn the business, right? Like, I think as you progress through your technology career, there's always someone above you who's a more, more senior from a technology perspective until you get to CTO. And then there's no one above you that is, a more senior technologist. And your peers and the people that you interact with are not technologists. And it's a very, very different dynamic, right? Like when you are a VP, you can talk about tech and everyone around you gets it. Your peers that you're trying to convince that you should do something are technologists. Like, if you build a system and you want them to adopt it, you can just talk about, the speed of the response, the ease of the developer experience. You can talk about how this is going to, reduce the amount of tech that they have on their platform. It's going to make their developers a little bit happier. Like you can talk tech to your peers and you can talk tech to your boss and you get some, oversight into the decisions that you're making. But as soon as you get to the level of a CTO, your peers are now people in sales, the chief revenue officer, people in finance, the chief financial officer, the CEO may or may not be technical. You have to speak that language, and you're now in a very, very different team dynamic where everyone understands the business and everyone understands the areas of their capability. And you have to learn those areas of capability. You have to learn what motivates the chief financial officer. You have to learn what motivates the chief revenue officer. You have to learn what motivates the chief marketing officer. And, to be part of that group and really understand each other and understand where your swim lane is and what your role in that is requires a deep understanding of everyone else's function within the business. And I would say for people who aspire to be a CTO, your ability to demonstrate business acumen and understand the facets of your business, and not just your business, but any other business that you might want to go into, is a critical thing. And oftentimes CTOs will fail because, we see senior technologists promoted into that position and they remain technologists. They don't become executives and they don't understand the business and how their work contributes to a much broader picture.
Absolutely. And this is why I tell people, especially the younger generation, try to understand business more. Don't do the mistake that I did. I took a long time until I understood that if I want to really get something better, I need to understand the business side of it. So when I talk, people understand what I'm saying. So 100% on that, Rob. And thank you for bringing this up. Final question, where people can get in touch and know more about you and about Health Edge?
LinkedIn. I'm always open on LinkedIn. So just connect with me so you know if you have any questions, let me know.
Great. Again, thank you very much, Rob, for giving me the time today and having this great conversation. I appreciate it. So I'm gonna put the LinkedIn profile in the show notes. So for the folks who are listening on your favorite podcasting app, you find that in the show notes. If you're watching on YouTube, you'll find the link in the YouTube description. And this is how I end my episodes every time. This is for the audience. If you just discovered us, thank you for passing by. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did so, please give me a favor, subscribe, and share it with your friends and colleagues. And if you are one of the people who keep coming again and again, thank you very much for loyalty. Thank you for the support. Thank you for keeping, since the beginning of 2025, this podcast in the top 200 Apple Podcast chart for the longest time since I started it 2.5 years ago. And we are trending in multiple countries at the same time, even during the slow months of summer. So maybe people are listening to us during their travel, which is great. And thank you for, all what you do for the show. As I said, voting for us, bringing us to the top charts, as I said. And thank you also to all my guests, including Europe, because this couldn't happen only by myself. This is the support of my audience and my guests. And as I say always, stay tuned for a new episode very soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Hit that subscribe button, share the show with your tech-savvy friends and fellow entrepreneurs, and leave us a review on your favorite podcast app. Your support means the world to us.